And good morning, Third Church family. Last week we were in storm school. This week, as we walk through the miracles of the Bible, we're going to be in the 10th chapter of Mark, starting at verse 46. Let's go there now. Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, that is, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the road begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stopped and says, "Call him." So they called to the blind man, "Cheer up, on your feet. He's calling you." Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. The blind man says, "Rabbi, I want to see." "Go," Jesus said. "Your faith has healed you." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. May God add a blessing to the hearer, reader, and doer of his holy word. And today, church, we want to use for a subject, getting out of our rut. Getting out of our rut. When we have snow events here in St. Louis, often I witness cars spun out on the side of the road, and they're just stuck in a rut. And the more they press the accelerator, the more the wheels just spin, digging even a deeper rut. This, unfortunately, is the way many of our lives look. We've lost our traction in life, and the faster we try to hit the gas pedal and get going, the deeper the rut gets, and we go nowhere day after day, month after month, year after year, just spinning our wheels. So this rutted routine of life, it leaves us unfulfilled, unhappy. It leaves us unsatisfied. This stagnant existence has many paralyzed, thinking to themselves, unless I get some traction, I'm never going to get out of a rut like this. And if this is you today, or if it's someone you know, this is their reality, well, God has you here today for answers. The conclusion you must come to is this: if I want to get out of this rut, I have to do something different, because what I'm doing and has been doing, is not working. I need to change what I'm doing. You see how simple this is? But you don't be surprised at how many people just keep spinning when it comes to their lives, because, they've never imagined life being anything different than being stuck in a rut. People are desperately wanting to change something in hopes to get them unstuck. I want to change jobs. I want to get better grades in school. I want to lose weight. I want to quit smoking. I want to know more about the Bible. I want to pray more, be more active in church. I want the Lord to use me greater. We all desire change for the better in our life. But it seems as many times that this desire to change in our life is not enough to get us to do something different. We just continue to spin our wheels. Listen, desire in and of itself is not enough traction to get us unstuck from our rut. We have heard time and time again the definition of insanity is keep doing the same thing expecting a different result. But for too many, the reality of insanity has stopped being a prison that we're trying to escape from, and we've just accepted this pseudo refuge of insanity as our home. Well, if you're spinning today and you want change, you want to get out of that rut, you're in the right place now. We will get the breaking free formula from a surprising source this morning, a blind man named Bartimaeus, who in his life said enough is enough. He declared that he had spent the last day of his life just spinning and going nowhere and digging a deeper rut. He decided that he was going to seize the opportunity to get some traction and to get going. In our account today, we're going to analyze the steps this one man took to change his life. In our analysis, we're going to outline some basic steps needed for traction to get out of our situation of hopelessness and this seemingly endless routine of life that we say we hate and we complain about, but we continue to do it every day, day in and out without change. So here we are this morning. Jesus has been teaching and preaching in the area around the Sea of Galilee. It was on his way to Jerusalem, he passed through Jericho, and there he encounters a blind man named Bartimaeus. Come with me this morning as we see the steps Bartimaeus took in getting out of his rut that will get us some traction. Number one this morning, we need to assume responsibility for our own life. We need to assume responsibility for our own life. When Bartimaeus heard that Jesus from Nazareth was nearby, he began to shout. See, we need to own our own responsibility. Just like the paralyzed man did at the pool of Bethesda we talked about a few weeks ago. Many people talk about their problems and never see themselves as having any hand in getting them stuck in their present rut, always blaming someone else for them not being able to do anything different. And they say that it's always someone else's fault. So today we have teenagers who place the blame on their parents and say, if my parents were more like this. We have parents who blame their children. If it weren't for you, I would. We have workers who blame their other coworkers or the boss. If I had a different assignment, a different person to work with, a different person over me, and the squealing sound coming from the spinning wheels in our life is that it's not my fault. There are things that will happen to us that we can't control, but we can be in command of our reaction and our response to things. Have you heard people say, he makes me so mad, or she makes me so mad? So question this morning, who has control over you to make you mad? The only person who can make you mad is the one you see in the mirror every day. True enough, people will do things to upset us, things that we don't like, things that will hurt us, but we make the decision of how we respond to that action. James 1:19 says, wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and here it is, slow to wrath. Let us look at what Bartimaeus did. He didn't blame someone else for his state. He didn't go around thinking that God or someone else owed him something. He called out to Jesus. He knew that his help was in a power higher than himself. He knew continuing to hang out where he has been is not going to change his situation. So he cried out to Jesus for help. He humbled himself and sought help and deliverance. He was not the one who made himself blind, but instead of blaming others, blaming the world, or blaming God, he cried out for help from the one who created sight. If we desire different things, we need to call on the creator of all things. Call on Jesus through prayer, study, service. Call on him through worship and praise. When we believe that Jesus can make a difference, then we will act and react like he will make a difference, which brings the second step today in getting out of our rut. We need to believe that we can change. We need to believe that we can change. People do what they believe. And if we don't believe that God can help our situation, we won't call on God or respond to God like he can help. Why do we call a plumber when we have a plumbing problem? Why do we go see a mechanic when the car is acting up? We do these things because we believe these people can help our present situation. So do we believe that Jesus can help our situation? Then we need to do as the blind man did. The blind man says, teacher, I want to see again. He believed that Jesus would do something in his life, that he wouldn't walk away unchanged. He believed that he'd be different. Why is it that some pray, God, if you'll just change my employer, if you just change my husband, if you just change my wife, God, if you just change my children, If you just change my friend, my relative, my address, God does not say that he's going to change our situation, but God does promise that he's going to change us. Philippians 1:6, being confident of this very thing, that he which has begun a good work in you will perform it until the last day of Jesus Christ. God is able to change our attitude, our viewpoint, our outlook. Bartimaeus knew that Jesus could change him, and that is what Bartimaeus wanted. What have you asked Jesus for lately? How do you come to service every week? Do you come with the expectation of being changed? Do you come with the expectation of leaving different than you came in? Church, if there's no expectation, there's no change. We need to believe that we can be different. We need to believe that God is faithful to his promise to continue to change us. Number 3 this morning, we need to make clear what we really need. We need to make clear what we really need. Jesus asked him, what do you want me to do for you? Specific prayers get specific answers. Jesus already knew what the man needed. Jesus wanted the man to say it. How often do we play communication games with others? Such as, a wife will say, he doesn't meet my needs. Then I will respond, well, have you told him what you need? Well, if he loves me, he ought to know what my needs are. Well, ma'am, he ought to know, but that doesn't necessarily mean he does know. You can't have an expectation that he knows if you've not made it plain and been specific about what your needs are. I am a husband who can and does clean. I can either fix some things around the house or I'll find someone to fix it. But there are times when my wife needs to be specific and say, I need you to clean in this area now. I need this fixed now, because my urgency about a situation may not match her urgency. What about a married person that will say, I'm so mad at my spouse? Well, the other person has no clue that you're mad at them at all. How many have even played the nothing game? You know, hey, what's wrong with you? Nothing. Well, I'm so glad that it is nothing, because I just thought with a twisted face, sour disposition, you slamming doors and carrying on, I mistakenly thought that it was something. But if you say it's nothing, nothing's wrong, how is the situation going to be changed? If you don't want to talk about it right now, just say that. But don't insult me and then lie to me with a nothing is going on answer when there is actually something. And sometimes we play these communication games with God. We assume that since God knows everything, then we don't have to tell God anything. God wants us to tell him what we need, exactly what we need. Jesus meets our needs when we tell him what our needs are. And I have found that many times when I express my needs to Jesus, he goes far above and beyond what I can ask for, true to the promise found in Ephesians 3:20. Now unto him that is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think. Could it be that sometimes what we want is not met because we never tell God what we really want? Notice Bartimaeus' cry, have mercy on me. He was a beggar just like we are, beggars in need of God's mercy and grace. He didn't cry out for food, clothing, money, housing, which were, I'm sure, needs that he had. He said, I want to see. He was clear with what he needed, and Jesus responded. Because he was clear in what he asked for, he had the faith that Jesus would give it to him. He was healed on that day. What are you in need of today? Have you clearly asked God for it? Let me be clear about something else this morning. Our desire to change is to become better than we were. Our desire to change needs to be linked to being a living testimony to God. God is looking to do something big in our lives with a lasting testimony. You see, God sometimes blesses us and we say, "Thank you, Lord," but few, if anyone, hears about what God did. Others may see the deliverance that God has provided, but they may not know the source of our deliverance. I'm sure Bartimaeus was hungry, and it would have made sense to have some new clothes. But can you imagine the testimony of "I was blind, but now I can see"? I read a story about a missionary physician in Africa who performed a miraculous surgery on a man who had become blind, and the man was able to regain his sight. The next day, the man disappeared from the clinic, and everybody was just frantic about his disappearance. Where did he go? And about a day later, when the clinic opened in the morning, there was the blind man who was healed. He had a rope in his hand, and at the other end of the rope were 10 other blind people. You see, God is not working miracles in our lives for us to keep showing up with no one on our rope. Who have you brought back to the healer? Who have you brought back to the deliverer and says, "Jesus healed me, so I brought my friend, my relative. I even have my enemy at the end of my rope because they need Jesus too"? What are you doing with your rope today? Number 4 this morning, we need to stop being hindered with what other people say. We need to stop being hindered with what other people say. They told blind Bartimaeus to be quiet. They were telling him, "Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. Be quiet. This isn't the right place. This isn't the right time. Nobody's ever done it that way before. You don't do it like that. Jesus does not have time for a blind man." Church, we find ourselves in difficulty when we worry about what other people think or will think. And guess what? Every person telling Bartimaeus what to do, they were absolutely wrong. Everyone told them that he shouldn't do it this way. Bartimaeus didn't care what the practice was. He didn't care what was politically correct. He didn't care if all the people says, "You just don't approach Jesus that way." He knew he needed help, and he refused to be denied. Have you prayed for change and God has not delivered the change? Well, keep calling out to God. Is there a need that hasn't been met in your life? Keep calling out to God. Are you hurting and you don't have an answer? Keep crying out to God. Are people in your life telling you to give up? Are they telling you to quit? Are people telling you that God does not care? Are you worried about what other people will think or what they will say? Are you concerned about how it may look? Are you worried about what other people will think that you're foolish? Jesus says, don't worry, so you don't quit calling out to God. Don't give up. Just cry out even louder. One of the greatest attributes of a Christian is persistence. Jesus told a parable about a neighbor who comes at midnight and is rewarded for persistence. Church, when we stand before God, God is not going to ask what others thought, but what we believed. Because what we believe today, that will make life as God wants us to have it. John 10:10 says it like this: "I am come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly." Jesus did not give his life for us to be comfortable with living in a rut, spinning our wheels. If he empowered Peter to walk on water, surely he can give us traction to get out of the snowy rut. Why do people in our lives discourage us? Well, maybe it's fear. Because if we get traction, we're going to leave the place that we're in right now. And maybe they're scared to death of that reality, because what that means is they're going to have to do something as well. We need to change the station, church. of what we allow to come into our ears. Too many negative people around us in our ear telling us what's not going to happen. We can't do it, or we won't do it. And this is the same thing that David experienced in Psalms 3. When he says, many people are around me saying to me that there is no help for me in God. And David silenced the negative chatter in his ears, and he reflected on the power of God, and he shouted, "But you, O God, are a shield for me, my glory, the lifter up of my head." He says, "I will not be afraid of 10,000 people that set themselves against me." When we believe that God can and will in our life, we will get the traction we need to drive out of our rut. Number 5 this morning, we need to stop waiting for perfect conditions. We need to stop waiting for perfect conditions. Verse 46 says a great crowd was following. He was waiting beside the road. Others were already traveling with Jesus. Others already had the opportunity. Bartimaeus, it seems, would have no chance. Do you know this interesting fact? This was the last time that Jesus would come to Jerusalem. If he had missed Jesus, if he had waited for more ideal conditions, he never would have been healed. We have to quit waiting for what in our mind is just the right time. We have to quit waiting for the right opportunity to come along. How many times have you invited someone to church or to Bible study, and the response is this: "Well, I'm going to come. I'm going to come as soon as I'm going to give my life to the Lord as soon as I'm going to join the church as soon as." There was a Latin poet named Horace in 23 BC. He used this phrase, carpe diem, which just translates seize the day. Church, we have to seize the opportunities that God gives us daily. We talk weekly about God not promising us time. No one knows the day when their physical life on this earth will come to an end. I think about joining this ministry, but I have to see where the Lord is leading me. My response to that: are you thinking that you're here by accident for the 6th time? Church, the right opportunity in your mind is not promised. The Bible declares this is the day that the Lord has made. What a better opportunity than right now, today, right now, while there's breath in your body, to give your life to the Lord, to get some traction and drive out of the rut that you're presently in. Number 6, we need to do something bold, something dramatic. It says the blind man threw off his coat. He jumped up and he went to Jesus. Church, we have to do something different. We can't do the same old thing. If we're going to break out of our rut, if we want life to be different, we need to do something bold, something dramatic. Hebrews 12:1 says, "Let us lay aside every weight, every sin that easily entangles us." It says to lay aside every burden, every sin, whatever is keeping us from making Jesus first in our life. What has you running from Jesus instead of running to him? What's holding you back from surrendering your life to the lordship of Jesus? Bartimaeus took off his coat, ran to Jesus. He did something bold, something dramatic, something different. How many times have you heard or even said, "Well, when I get older, well, when I get more time, well, when I get a chance," and on and on and on with the excuses? James 1:22 says this: "Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like a man who looks at his face in a mirror, and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But the man who looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues to do this, not forgetting what he has heard, but doing it, he will be blessed in what he does." People of faith don't merely listen and forget. They actually do what God's teaching says. It's time for our faith to give birth to action. This will be a year of doing, not just sitting, a year of giving, not hoarding, singing, not sulking, being courageous, not just complaining. It's time to drive out of our rut this morning. Lastly, today, when Bartimaeus was given traction by Jesus, he followed Jesus. He followed Jesus. The scripture says, then he followed Jesus down the road. Followed Jesus in thought, followed Jesus in deed. See, these are actions. There is no need to stand in a rut paralyzed with the phrase, what would Jesus do? For the Christian, this is a rut creating question. For those who have really been at the foot of the cross, have been delivered by Jesus, we don't have to wonder. We just follow the plan of what Jesus has already done and what he's already told us to do. We don't have this same frame of mind when it comes to work. We don't just sit around and say to ourselves, when an issue comes up at work, I wonder what my boss would do. No, we do what we've been shown. We do what we've been told. How many children faced with situations, they say to themselves, I wonder what mommy or daddy would do in this situation. No, they do what they've been shown. They do what they've been told. As it is with Jesus, we follow him by doing what we have been shown and what we've been told by him. But in order to follow him, we need to find him. As I close this morning, I want to leave you with a story entitled, I Can Make It From There. There was a little boy that was out walking his dog, and he was not paying attention to where he was going and just letting the dog lead him. Then all of a sudden he looked up and realized that his surroundings were no longer familiar to him, and he began to cry because he was scared. He was frightened. He stood at the corner crying uncontrollably, and there was an adult who saw the little boy in distress and sought to help him. They said, what is the matter, little boy? Well, I'm lost and I follow my dog. I don't know where I am. So the adult says, well, let me help you. What's the name of the street you live on? What is your phone number? And the boy just cried even louder because he didn't know the answers to the questions. And the adult says, well, let's try this. Is there a building nearby where you live so that we can get close to your house? All of a sudden, the little boy's face lit up and he says, yes, my house is near a church. And in front of that church, there's a large cross. So, do you know where that is? And the adult says, yes, I know exactly where that is. So the little boy says, if you can take me to the foot of that cross, I can make it from there. I can make it from there. So this little boy was lost, but getting to the foot of the cross gave him direction. And if you're lost this morning, if you just get to the foot of the cross, I promise you today, you can make it from there. If you're confused or troubled or hurting, if you need healing and direction, if you need to know that you're loved, I declare to you today, you need to get to the foot of the cross and you can make it from there. Your life does not have to continue to spin out of control, getting deeper at the rut. Get to the foot of the cross and shout, Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me, save me, rescue me, deliver me. And that will be all you need to get the traction, because Jesus will get you out of that rut. I want to thank you today for joining us, and I pray that you have a fantastic week. May God bless you and God keep you as we get out of our ruts this week.